My name is Ricky Leung, Senior Director of Programs at NCAAT, North Carolina Asian Americans Together, an organization aimed at empowering the Pan-Asian American community across the state. This is a critical time for all communities of color. In the wake of the COVID-19 pandemic, Asian Americans have experienced racism and hate, even here in North Carolina. We've seen violence against other communities of color as well, from white supremacists, police violence, and the disparities in COVID deaths. When redistricting is not done right, it only serves to make matters worse. Asian Americans are the fastest growing racial demographic in North Carolina, grew by 65% since the 2010 census, and has become an integral part of the fabric of our communities. Our voices are more necessary than ever. As North Carolina gains a new seat, in part due to our community's growth, we and all communities of color deserve to have our voices heard in every step of the political process. The maps drawn by the state legislature negatively impact all our communities' representation and fail to create the democracy our Constitution requires. These maps were destined to fail us from the start. North Carolina's established redistricting laws mandate drawing Voting Rights Act compliant districts that do not dilute the votes of Black communities in particular. How can we honor this when this community has refused to even consider racial data from the beginning? Here's one example of how a race-neutral approach can affect our communities. In the newly proposed congressional mapping of District 6, municipalities with some of the highest Asian American populations in the state, Cary, Morrisville, and Apex, are carved out of Wake County and packed in with Durham and Orange counties. Census data shows that the proposed District 6 has more than 100,000 Asian American residents. In contrast, the neighboring District 5 has only 30,000 total, and District 7 has only about 18,000. Our community is overrepresented in District 6 to the detriment of our voting power in these other districts, diluting our community's representative vote overall. On the other hand, the communities in the Triad region have expressed their desire to be districted together. Asian American, immigrant, and refugee populations there share specific needs and resources. If High Point, Greensboro, and Winston-Salem are split into 3 separate districts, 10, 11, and 12, as proposed, our community's voice will be fractured. And these are not the only issues with these maps. Rushed, opaque processes and paltry engagement with the public have denied working class folks and community members with limited English proficiency adequate time to analyze and voice concerns. This consistent lack of transparency has created districts favoring the partisan legislative majority at the expense of underrepresented voices. Our immigrant, migrant, and refugee communities will only continue to grow. The maps the General Assembly is voting on will impact the voice and voting power of our communities for the next decade. We stand in solidarity with all North Carolinians, and especially our Black and Brown communities, to denounce these maps and this redistricting process. We deserve a fair, equitable, and constitutional redistricting process.